You're watching the 420 Pace Network, found at 420radio.ca and paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Alan,
Ladies and gentlemen,
you having a nightmare? What if it's true?
ladies and gentlemen,
Alan, it's a possibility, isn't it?
the very word secrecy is repugnant
Secrets.
in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers
Constant, extreme danger.
which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger
Extreme danger.
that an announced need for increased security
This is Conspiracy Queries with Alan Carr.
will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment.
The government, yeah.
That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control.
You're crazy.
And no officious, high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes.
Isn't the Pentagon suspicious that all the buildings would blow up?
Or to withhold from the press and the public
I think you're just looking at things for the first time.
the facts they deserve to know.
You've had your whole fucking life to think things over. What good's a few minutes more gonna do you now?
The facts they deserve to know.
Gotta have some fun. Gotta have some fun. That's Jack
They
Nicholson
deserve
from
to
The
know.
Shining. Oh, yeah, I know. We're going live. Hey, welcome to Green Crush. Listen to all this music.
deserve to know.
Ah. Yeah. Hey, welcome to the show. Green Crush. What is that anyway?
To know.
Is it a salad? No. Could be, though. Should be. Should be a salad. Is it a smoothie? It is if you're in California, but that's a different company. What are we going to do here?
Facts they deserve to know.
Yes! What does he mean, elevated existence? What does he mean by that? How come he's saying elevated existence? Why is this guy bragging about himself? It's not bragging. It's not. How do you even know I'm talking about me right now? Oh, you do, right? You do. Okay, well, we are talking about things cannabis. Listen to all this noise. I love it. I'm inside this giant thing that's making all this noise. And it'll simmer down in a minute. I just wanted to get started because this has gotten really interesting for me. This has gotten strangely interesting for me. And by that I mean that we have been talking about this substance, cannabis, for about a year and a half now on the air, and for several years before that, I'm doing it, relax. I was talking about it as something that pulled my ass out of the fire when stage 4 cancer came a-knockin'. I'm supposed to be dead right now. And when I take a look around at this world, I kind of think I might have made the wrong choice. Man, this is really getting screwed up out here. There's a lot of terrible people doing awful things. And one of the things that they're doing is making access to cannabis even more difficult than it was before, although now it's legalized. This is called a sleight of hand. This is called a magic trick. This is called the guy who designed the system studied well and came up with a series of strictures that make it seem like it's legal and free to those that don't do any homework. And so to the rest of us, we realize now it's been wrapped up, suffocated in these rather large entanglements of brutal, repressive laws. And the reason I have a problem with that personally is because cannabis has been a thing that I have used ever since I was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal cancer that was going to kill me. In a year. I had a year. I've been given my best before date. Have you? And I'm well past it, thanks. Can you tell? I mean, I'm sure you can make insults using those few bits of words. Go for it. It's fun. It's all bonus time for me. I'm really serious. I'm looking around this world and the stuff that's going on and thinking, I shouldn't have tried really that hard to fight to come back. And I realized the only reason I did do it, I guess, is that I know for a fact there is at least one other person. In fact, I know there are at least 2 other people. In fact, I know of at least 10 people. 10 different people with their own lives. 10 different people who I was lucky enough to be able to help out with something that I use to help me out. Now, I've used it on a lot more people than that. I know a lot of people that have used it, I should say, to be avoiding any kind of prosecutorial bullshit. But listen, this stuff is we're told that it's a poison and that it's a toxic thing and that the people selling it are bad, so now we had to get rid of them and get the government selling it instead so they can sell the bad, terrible, toxic thing. You following the line here? You see the part where it doesn't make sense? If it was really terrible and toxic, it wouldn't be selling it at all. They'd just stay forever against it. Like the way they do with a lot of other substances. But here's the problem. It does really help a lot of people. It is really an avenue of hope because it can work on a lot of people. It did work on me. It has worked on other people. I have helped other people use it. And so that is the reason that I'm still here. Not because I'm enjoying the shit out of this place. That's definitely not the reason. The reason is because I'm helping other people find this stuff. And if they have not, found any other kind of alternative to get them out of a health problem, they're trying this, and it has been working. And so that is what I have been able to bring to some people. That's the reason I'm stuck here. Every time I sit here and go, I can't believe I'm sitting in this shit. Kind of saw it coming, knew how they were going to go, don't like it, saw the repression coming ahead of time, saw the ignorance ahead of time, saw the lies in real time. And the parts that I've been correct about, the only part that makes you feel good is that you got it right at all. The rest of it sucks because you got it right. I would rather have been wrong. But they are so repressive with this healthful substance. They're just not using it right. And so now we have this problem where, the government tells you a bunch of lies and a lot of people believe it. And now we are at this situation where the leader of this country, it is a company too. The leader of this country has said that they wanted to legalize it to keep it out of the hands of kids, and he hasn't done that. And he wanted to legalize it to keep it out of the hands of the black market, and he hasn't done that. And if he has, he can't prove it. I mean, it's so screwed up here that Calgary has canceled plans for 4 public cannabis consumption sites after a significant public outcry. So what we're saying is, here's a city in Canada, which is the country that's legalized cannabis, and now these people would like to have a place to be able to consume this thing that's legal. But because of a significant, they say in quotes, public outcry in Ward 9 of Calgary, where 1,800 people weighed in against the proposed sites, and I'll bet there's hardly any of them that didn't have a case of beer in the basement. Anyway, it's almost impossible for anyone other than a homeowner in this country to consume cannabis. I mean, if you're following the laws, if you're foolish enough to pay attention to what these strictures are laid down by these people that don't really get it. If you're following those laws, and I don't advise that you do, but if you're following those laws, there's really not a lot of places you can consume this stuff, even though it's technically speaking legal. It's crazy. If you own a house, you're good. If you don't, maybe you're not. That's not okay. That's designing a system that is inherently on its face bad news. It's imbalanced. How can Quebec have no plants and somebody else can have 5 or 4 in the same country? Like you're a joke if you're a leader saying stuff like that. It's just ridiculous. You can't just put it on the provinces and tell a Canadian guy, oh, you can smoke it here, but you can't smoke it there. You can move it around here, but you can't move it around there. You can use it here, but you can't use it there. But it's legal. But it's okay. But don't use it. Like, these people are idiots. One of the things that really reminds me of how backwards they have gotten this whole telescope is that they tell you that, if you use it, you're doing things to your brain that are problematic. You're not being realistic. You're not being realistic. And it's funny because they're not being realistic. They want a drug test that can show that you're high on cannabis, and I don't blame them for wanting one, but it doesn't exist. But they just say that it does exist, and then they act as though it does exist, but it doesn't exist. Can't prove it. This will be shown in court later. Can't prove it. You could just have somebody with a certain amount of cannabis and somebody with way more cannabis, and that guy's not high, and the first guy was. And they're going to have a tough time with that in court. Why are we here? Well, because a Harvard study says that cannabis cut tumor growth by 50% in just 3 weeks. That's why we're here. Why are we here? Because more evidence there that cancer commits suicide by eating itself after exposure to cannabis. This is called apoptosis. Talked about it a bunch last year. Google up Cristina Sanchez. She's a molecular biologist from a university in Madrid, Spain. Complutense University. First reported in 1998, 20 years ago, that THC, the primary psychoactive component, induces tumor cell suicide. But don't take THC. It's bad for you. You know that shit that kills cancer. Don't take that. It's no good for you. Has to be government regulated. Then we have a federal court in the States saying that they've sided with big pharmas, that CBD has no medicinal value. That's funny. GW Pharmaceuticals in England is going to freak out when they find out that their CBDs that they sell for $33,000 a year have no medical value. That'll be interesting for them. But that's what we do have. A federal appeals court has sided with Big Pharma and ruled that CBD has no medical value and must therefore remain a Schedule I drug alongside heroin. These are the people making the decisions, saying that we are the people who are unrealistic and don't have realistic goals and dreams. Meanwhile, there's nothing but reports on cannabis killing cancer cells, right? So, listen, we've got a guest today, and it's kind of exciting because this guest is one of these kind of guys who, I've known him for a long time, and he is a very intelligent individual, so that's another great reason to know him. And for years and years, he used to have a bookstore in Toronto. Remember those? When they had a store and brick and mortar, and inside there they put things to buy. Remember that? Anyway, so Patrick now has an online store because his brick and mortar store, like everybody else, it became exceptionally difficult to pay for in this world where we make these kinds of decisions, where health is secondary and truth is number one, or number two. So basically, Patrick White used to run what was called a Conspiracy Culture bookstore. That was in Parkdale in Toronto, in Roncesvalles neighborhood. Very trendy Tony, Roncesvalles neighborhood. And he was selling fantastic books there and other materials with his wife, Katina. And they no longer sell those things because maybe he'll talk a little bit about that. And I kind of lost Patrick a little bit along the way because he was going through his problems with his store not working out the way he wanted it to. It was too difficult, too much time, too many hours on the one hand, while I was busy dying with cancer on the other hand. And then I didn't see him for some time, and then later on I find out he's way deep into cannabis and all things cannabis, and not so much the bookstore. And I found out that, and then he found out what was going on with me, so it's great, although I missed the bookstore, to see Patrick White here, and we're going to get some great inside information because Patrick has been also a seller of an illegal dispensary, I guess. Was that prior to dispensary on October 17th in Canada? You were a purveyor of cannabis treats, is that right?
That's correct.
Oh, we lost your mic. We're going to need some more leaning in.
All right, that's absolutely correct.
Okay, so Patrick is, so tell us what happened there. What do we do? 2013, 14, you got interested in, were you doing the bookstore and cannabis at the same time, or how did it all start for you?
Dispensing cannabis has been something that's been going on for quite some time, paralleling the bookstore. And then once we decided to close the bookstore down, which was a couple years back, a dispensary had opened up in Parkdale, literally a minute from my place. So I started to frequent it, and after a couple of visits, they realized that I knew what I was talking about. I was informative. I was helping with some of the customers that were in the shop. I knew more information than the people behind the counter. So they said, hey, if you ever decided you wanted to work here, there's an opportunity. So asked them about the pay. Seemed pretty fair. Decided to give it a shot. After 3 shifts, they gave me an opportunity to manage the space. After a few weeks there, managing a secondary space.
It was like a small little retail store tucked in? Or what was the dimension of this thing? Was it pretty big? Or
it's fairly large. It was about 1,800 square feet, but the majority of that was just allocated to facilitating the bodies that were in there. I mean, not much of it was dedicated to the product itself as much as the space for the people to fill in and busy it up. I mean, it was just constantly busy. It was nuts.
Yeah. So, and that was going on for some time.
Yeah, managed the dispensaries for about a year, and took a trip to Mexico over the Christmas break and came back. And my first shift in, which was January 10th of 2018, about 4:30 in the afternoon, doors just smashed right in, and a crew of undercover cops came smashing in.
Oh, wow.
And just started screaming and yelling at everybody, get on the floor, hands up, hands behind the head, just all kinds of stuff. And
right.
You know, of course, you're freaking out, and that was it. Got hit with three charges.
You, as the worker of the manager,
as a manager, yeah. I got
and
hit.
did they address the owner with this, or were they not able to because he wasn't there?
There was no way for them to know who the owner was. I mean, from upon starting shifts there, we were told that there were no managers per se, no owners. Everybody was out west, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so you took the rap then. Basically,
I took the rap. Yeah.
So when you were getting arrested, were they just taking things and putting them into bags, and or were you not able to see what they were up to, or what did they do basically?
It was a flurry of activity. There were probably at least a half dozen cops that were scouring the property, looking for product and looking in drawers and just trying to identify what was in the actual space. And then there was at least 3 or 4 other officers who were, I guess, dedicated to keeping the staff
just immobile,
occupied and immobile, yeah,
and not talking to each other, I would guess, or did that not matter?
No, I think they were probably trying to encourage that, just to get
really?
additional information. They were asking tons of questions. It was a barrage of questions, lots of pressure.
Any physical force? Like, I mean, to yourself? Hurtful? Pain?
No pain. I remember one of the officers sort of just grabbing me by the neck and the shoulder here and kind of like turning me to face the wall. And then we were all asked to put our hands up on the wall.
Huh.
And then we stood there for, maybe 3 or 4 minutes.
And this is all because you were in the police officer's home touching his things?
No. We were in a dispensary providing medicine to adults over the age of 19 who were making their own decisions.
Oh, they made their own decisions?
And decided that was the route that they wanted to go.
Oh, I see. But the cop says no to this. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, they were very angry.
So they were angry. This is what I want to talk to you about. Okay, this is like, I'm sorry you went through this, but I'm going to pick apart this little, this little meal you've dropped here.
Whatever.
I've never been arrested for this thing, but honest to God, like, I have to say, like, there's so much of it bullshit. Like, let's look at it from their point of view and say this. Okay, you get some paperwork here. We'll look at that. But let's look at this point of view, right? Let's say I'm the cop. Okay, so I just walked in this store, and you're selling weed, and that's illegal. Now, why am I angry at you? Why can't I just say, all right, man, listen, you're not supposed to be doing this, and we're going to arrest you, and all that stuff, and just, like, go through the process with about as much excitement as it would be to, borrow a library book. What's with the, all right, get down on the floor, and all this, yelling and screaming, and, like, how did that facilitate the arrest for them better with you than if they just said, dude, sorry, man. I know you're not the owner, but we're going to do this thing up, you know? Like, how come they got to use that kind of scare tactic bullshit? What is that?
I'm guessing it's probably to create more of a complacent environment where the individuals who are being subjected to the barking and the yelling and the screaming, I mean, most people aren't in those types of situations,
Sure.
right?
So they're more compliant out of fear kind of thing? Is that it?
Well, most people, when they're terrified or in extreme fear, they tend to shut down and just become, I guess, frozen, right? Which is ideal for a cop in that type of a situation.
So what you're saying is you want to use a tactic of fear to prevent someone from using a substance that eventually became legalized that they want to use to take care of some pain or whatever reason they might want to. This is what you're telling me.
That's not how I would go about it, no. But for some reason or another, it seems to be the mandate for the Toronto Police Force, yes. I mean, I've seen other videos that have been posted online in terms of dispensaries and shops getting raided, and it's always been extreme and unnecessary and over the top and just, you know, it's like you said, why does there have to be that extreme rage and anger? I'm guessing it's probably something to do with the way that they're trained to perceive these places as a threat or an enemy to society. Because, I mean, think about it. I'm sure most cops, like any normal individual, would say, wow, so an adult wants to go this route and treat themselves and medicate themselves. Sure, why not? So, I mean, it's just, I guess, a way of disconnecting the cop from the logic behind people utilizing dispensaries, right?
I guess so, yeah. It's very punitive. It's very, you know, all that yelling and screaming for this thing that is now legal.
And for a shop that's full of people who, you know, half of them are there for anxiety and stress disorders, it was a very tense situation, yeah.
So you are in the middle of this. So that was an arrest coming from January of 2018. So you're still involved in that, right? You've got paperwork here. What's going on here? So you have to go to court in Toronto to deal with this, or what are we at? Where are you at for trying to help people out? What's your mess here?
Well, everything has basically been squashed. So in terms of the charges, so I got hit with 3 charges. One was unlawfully possessing a Schedule II substance, possessing a Schedule II substance for the purpose of trafficking, and possession of proceeds of property or thing obtained by crime not exceeding $5,000. So those were the charges that I was hit with. And then also on top of that, I was issued a bylaw fine of $680 for using, I guess, basically a commercial space for dispensing an illegal substance.
Yeah. It's funny that, you know, they've lost a lot of the moral high ground, because what I hear in there is the same thing over and over again. You know, like you've got possession of a substance to sell, possession of a substance to sell that's green, possession of a substance to sell that's green that's in a bag, possession to sell something that's green that's in a bag that's in a store. Like, how many more, you know, like, it's just bullshit, right? Like, you're just, like, layering on extra pieces of, you know, nonsense.
Sure, it's just additional income, additional whatever it is, right?
Yeah, it's so transparent.
I feel very lavish and luxurious, though, having such an array of charges.
So where are you now with the legal fight on this? Are you getting a lawyer, or what are you expecting?
So thankfully, the dispensary provided a lawyer for us. He took care of everything. Basically, what it ended up in was that our court date for the decision of everything was actually Wednesday, October 17th of all dates.
Are you serious? That was a legalization date, folks, if you weren't. So you were in court on the 17th?
I was in court on Wednesday, October 17th for charges of possessing and distributing cannabis.
A thing that was becoming legal access that
for
day.
Recreational use on that same day, yes.
Wow. It's quite the world we live in, don't you think? So that's a fake question. Don't worry. So as you were so that was the end. That was your last day, I'm guessing, as a cannabis dispensary manager.
No, actually.
No? Then what happened?
I went against my lawyer's advice, and 3 days later was back to work at the second location that had yet to been raided. It was, I mean, I won't lie, for a guy of my educational background and experience to have an opportunity to make that kind of income over the course of a day and go home with cash in hand, I mean, I couldn't stay away, bud. It's like,
Yeah.
so 4 days later, I was back managing the other space, and did that for up until the end of April, where apparently one of the owners was getting a tip from a guy within the bylaw office that we were going to get raided that week on the Tuesday. So we worked the Monday, we closed, didn't go into work on the Tuesday. When I drove by on the Wednesday, the whole front of the door had been smashed in, so I'm assuming a raid or something had happened on the Tuesday.
Wow. And so you were getting to the place where were you working there again? I mean, you know, where you weren't working there anymore. You were getting to that, like you were being squeezed out at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, every day there was just the amount of tension and stress looking at the cameras and thinking, fuck, is this guy like an undercover? Or, yo, is that Redbeard, the guy that raided us at the Queen Space? Like, you know,
Right.
It was just so much anxiety and making sure people are closing the door behind them and not just opening the door for random passerbys and whatnot. It was tough,
Yeah.
but like, I don't know if it was worth it at the last couple months for the amount of anxiety that you're enduring to go to work and be that fucking stressed out. Like, it was really tough. But at the end of the day, going home with like, fuck, $350 cash was pretty good. 10-hour shift. So,
Right. Yeah, and you don't get that much in the world anymore. Not for a decent gig, anyway. So now, and you are using it yourself, right? Were you also a partaker of the substance for various different reasons, medically?
yeah, absolutely. I'm 42, so I was born in 76, and I started smoking cannabis in 1990 at high school. At that point,
14.
14.
Too young, your brain. Oh, what about that? You know I got to go here.
Yeah, so I don't know if that exacerbated underlying issues that I already had or what, but I mean, I have been diagnosed with Asperger's, the ASD, autism spectrum disorder. I do have depression disorders and stress disorders, and I find that cannabis is pretty much the only thing that relieves me of particular situations or symptoms that can't be alleviated in any other way.
What other kind of things have you tried?
In what regard? In terms
Well,
of
the other things you can try, like have you tried an antidepressant? Have you tried
well, when I was 16, my family doctor at the time had tried to convince my parents that I was depressed, and he had prescribed me Prozac.
Oh. At what age?
16.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so for a doctor to look at a teenager who's smoking cannabis with his friends and going out to party and having fun, and to like identify and label that as someone who's depressed, and then to coerce and convince that individual's parents that he should be put on a fucking selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which will exacerbate any kind of fucking depression disorder in the first place.
Right.
To me was like, so thank God, you know, I won't lie, I took one pill like maybe 4 days later, had diarrhea, and I was like, yo, I can't fucking take these pills. I shit myself out in the fucking out in society. Like, I can't do this. And I just pretended, like, after that to my parents, like, yeah, I'm taking them. And, you know, every couple of days I'd throw a couple in the fucking toilet and flush them down. But I never take fucking Prozac, bud.
Yeah.
And now that I know what I know about Prozac and these psychotropic drugs, it's like,
Well, this is an interesting point you bring up, because we are sitting at this place now where cops yell at people doing this stuff and everything. But basically, those drugs that you're talking about are the ones that they want us to use. The very similar to meth, Adderall, and these kinds of things. They're saying that's what you should be using. That's what you're supposed to use. If you have Patrick's got stress issues, you should be on these,
well, Oxycontin and all these other things, like, bud, like,
Yeah.
look at the opioid problem that's going on in Canada, and yet the doctors, fuck, it's like they're Hollywood stars. They're just anxious to sign their fucking autograph and give people these prescriptions.
Well, Canada sent letters to the manufacturers of the opioids asking them to please stop. You know, almost 4 of them answered. So, but that's okay. And we can do that with this terrible, there's no question about the damage that it can cause while they still prosecute all of this cannabis holding.
And the letters
shit.
could just be PR and you know,
yeah,
just to have public perception, you know, like, oh, they're really doing their fiduciary duty to try to quell the problem.
Right.
But fuck, I mean, it's all song and dance, puppet theater, right?
So then, okay, so you were working there, you get hit with these crappy things, you got to deal with it, and it's coloring your ear with this bullshit and everything. So what have you done? Like, that dispensary is now closed, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so the
those two
dispensaries,
places.
they've both closed, but the individuals that were behind them have since, least 4 or 5 other dispensaries under different names in different locations.
Yeah.
You know, I've been
They're still in business.
still in business.
Okay. Because when they take the cannabis, this is what I was thinking, is if they take the cannabis from a dispensary, on the one hand, like when you look at all these individual pieces of this whole saga, right, it's nuts. Because on the one hand, they're taking cannabis away from dispensaries. And then on the other hand, they got people that need cannabis, want cannabis, are legally able to have cannabis, sitting there going, I can't get any. And they've got efforts where they're getting rid of it. And they've got efforts where they're lobbying Bill Blair to make sure that nobody else also grows cannabis while you're out of it, while you don't have any. I mean, all of these thoughts, right? These are the thoughts that are so scattered and all over the map and don't really work together. This is the kind of image of the mental activity that I summon when they say cannabis fucks with your brain. Like, they come up with all these laws and these rules and these needs and these desires that aren't tethered in reality. They would say that about us. They'd say, oh, you're nuts, you're crazy, you know. Oh, you're not going to have, like, hologram concerts down at the Dome and everything. That's all crazy talk. But they want to have a breathalyzer that can so tell you exactly where you are impaired on this, which is it's not a thing you can have, but they want it.
And cops administering blood tests on the side of the road.
So that's okay, even though it's not connected to reality, but they'll make fun of us for not being connected to reality. Like, that's where they go. They go right to the thing that they are doing, you know?
Well, it's all projection, right?
Yeah, it's totally projection. That's what I mean. Like, what is going on? Like, if this guy starts telling me don't beat your wife, I know he's going to be beating his wife. Like, that's where they're at. This is how they've been doing it so much along the way. Like, oh, this thing's dangerous. Oh, so it's healthy. Oh,
but that's the programming and the conditioning, right?
Right.
It's that whole Orwellian psyop where, you know, we create this environment where people are almost like, I hear you, bud.
It's so frustrating.
It's absolutely
cannabis is going to damage your brain. Hey, the THC that's in cannabis can kill the protein that causes Alzheimer's. Hey.
Yeah, but let's fill every house with fucking scented Glade candles. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's just fucking
those
like,
plug-in things. Yeah, that's when I knew we
just
went off the rails. When you start plugging things into the wall that have Jello in them, right? Chemical
melt
Jello.
and disperse fucking artificial flavoring. Holy fuck, bud.
Let's take this shit and then we'll plug it into the wall too. I like that, actually. That's a great angle. Anyway, we're getting off track a little bit. So I'm trying to find out, trying to just get some more information, because basically what I'm doing, Patrick, is I'm trying to understand from the mindset of people that are comfortable and deep into this world what it is about it that makes it so great and okay to use. And so, you know, we've had all kinds of conversations where people are upset that they don't like that it's being used as a cure-all for so many things, even though it does really address a lot of things. The same way a nutrient will. Like a heart attack pill isn't going to help your cholesterol. It isn't going to help your lungs that you're having difficulty breathing with. But a vitamin C, a nutrient, can help with your hair, with your teeth, with your eyes, with your stomach, your digestion, all kinds of things, because it's a property that affects your entire body.
Sure.
So this is what cannabis is, but they play it like, oh, it's a drug, can't cure everything. You're nuts for thinking that. But it's actually a nutritional compound. Like, if I eat a banana, I can't tell you the 27 different ways that a banana is helping me out, but I know it is, right? So it's the same with cannabis. So that's why it does help with so many of these physical or mental afflictions. It helps so many things. It's a nutrient. You've been denying this nutrient in your body for 80 years.
Chances are anything that comes out of the earth, but I mean, if it's got elements that are found within the periodic table, we are of the earth, you know, chances are our body requires it to a certain extent, right? That's just the way I've always approached things. You need stuff of the earth. You are of the earth. Cannabis is of the earth.
Yeah.
Seed-bearing plant, bud. Come on.
Right at the beginning.
Right at the beginning, from time.
And they work so hard. This is the part that makes me think a bunch. This is what I think about a lot now, is they work so hard to make sure that it is perceived as a bad thing. And then so many people believe it. Like, this is like a magic trick that you just can't believe.
Well, I mean, think about the etymology of it, right? Like, vision.
Right.
Programming.
Right.
So, for time, they're convincing us that it's this demonic entity or whatever it is, and just think about the sheer volume of industry that would be completely rendered useless.
Well, that's a lot.
Well, it's like, think about Jack Herer's book, right? The Emperor Wears No Clothes, and just the sheer applications of hemp and cannabis. I mean, it's really astounding.
It is astounding. It's clothing, it's building materials, concrete,
rope, textiles,
it's beams,
paper.
It's boardwalks that need replacing. It's
everything.
Insulation.
Feed for the animals. I mean, think about the time when hemp was grown in excess and they used to feed the animals all this abundant hemp, right? And
Right.
all these animals are getting a ridiculous
CBDs.
amount of CBD. And then they declare it, they ban it, they outlaw it. And now instead they're giving these farm animals hay, corn, stuff with mold in it, the shit that's rotten, even other animals, you know? So that in turn, we're consuming that and we're, I guess, reaping the benefits of whatever it is that these animals are eating, which is terrible. So, I mean, I'm sure there's a parallel in terms of human health and like farming production and the removal of hemp and the access that the animals had to that as feed. Like, there's all sorts of like weird things that people don't think about. And
When you know something like that, and you can research the different aspects of it, at some point on that journey of discovery, would you not find the person or group of persons that are making this happen? You know what I mean? Like in other words, if I know so much about this healthful property, I'm basically a criminal if I hide it from you and don't let you have it and give you a hard time if you try to get it. Basically.
Guilty by omission, right?
Right, exactly. So I must know about it, and I'm keeping it away from you on purpose. I don't accept the possibility that they're just being careful and they know certain bad things and they're just trying to make sure. I think they know all of the properties. I don't have a lot of faith in the rules per se from the big players. A big player changes the rules anytime he wants. You know, I mean, just what happened in the States with Trump. You know, it's like he's not been breaking the law. He hasn't been doing that. Oh my God! Actually, we broke 2 laws. Okay, well, so you know, let's have a fine instead of a penalty to go to jail. That's not a strong law. That's not a good law. They just keep moving the goalposts all the time.
Well, it looks like progression, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as opposed to stagnating and just sitting idle, it looks like they're actually doing something.
Doing something. But it's not. Like basically, I know that this thing can so bring you a great amount of health, and I'm just keeping it away from you while I punish you for trying to get at it. Like, that's a collective game plan. Right? That's a mindset.
It's a corporate mentality.
Yeah.
So I would check to see what type of ties that individual has in various pharmaceutical companies and things on and so on and so forth, right? Because any sort of informed individual would know that that's complete and utter shit.
Yeah.
What they're saying. And I mean, you got to have some...
But they are saying that shit, and people are uninformed, and they kind of are going along with it, and that's just the way it is. And the people that can prove the other side of the story are laughed at or ridiculed, such as us sitting here like, these 2 couple of potheads. You know, he's got a beard, he's got long hair, they're a couple idiots. Right? That's what they think. Like
that's all right, because fuck, public perception, but I really don't give a rat's ass.
Yeah.
And that's part of the fucking matrix disconnect, right? I mean,
right.
I really don't care who thinks or says what, because as an informed individual, I'm going to make the right choices for me and my family. And that's what's fucking important, bud. Right? I mean, I can't worry about what all these other people are doing on a constant basis. I'd shut down. I wouldn't be able to do anything for myself.
Yeah.
You know, so what I try to do and what I was trying to do with the bookstore was to provide an environment where you could help at least give answers to those who are looking. You know, I didn't want to be that guy in a fucking corner with a megaphone and world's coming to an end, this, that, and the other. But I did want to be the guy where if people were interested enough to find my space, I'd give them all the fucking time in the world and be as honest and as open as I could be with them, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So that was sort of what I was doing. And with the cannabis, it was like my mom was diagnosed with cancer in 2008. And for 3 years she was sick. And it wasn't until the last like 4 months where I was able to convince her to try the RSO.
Wow.
And my dad was against it because, you know, he's like, drugs, it's
illegal.
Weed, and the doctor says this and the doctor says that.
Right.
But my mom, after using it for like not even 2 weeks, she was saying how the amount of like comfort she was experiencing was so much more
helping her out.
Oh, it was incredible, the difference. It was like night and day for her.
And of course she'd already tried a bunch of other things as well.
Oh, well, she had already been through all the chemos and all the radiations, and she was like suffering from like really bad neuropathy. Her hair was completely gone. Her fingers were all curled up. She had so much weight gain. Like you wouldn't even recognize her as like my mom. So she was like fucking transformed by the pharmaceutical industry, you know? And towards the last like couple of weeks, she told me that was like the best she had felt in the 3 years, pretty much.
Wow.
So that for
And
me,
some prick would just say, "Oh, that's anecdotal." I mean, you know, we
probably.
can't even back it up now. You know,
Well,
but I mean that's incredible. I mean, you know,
but it's my mom. She was like,
Sure.
why would my mom have any sort of
Exactly.
an agenda to lie to me or to subvert my like?
But people say that they go, "Well, that's anecdotal," and they just push it aside. Like it's amazing that people will go there. But I'm saying, I remember you at that time freaking out, going crazy. So your dad was resisting this. I mean, I didn't know what you were doing back then. I never heard of it back then. So your dad was resisting this, and your mom's saying, "Gee whiz, of all the shit I've been through, that's the best feeling I've been."
Well, she's like, if I'm gonna sit in a fucking device that's gonna pump me full of this for however long,
Yeah. Rather be cannabis
what,
than
I can't
chemo.
try a little drop of oil under the tongue, some sublingual application. Really, I can't try this.
Yeah.
So finally, she's just like, okay, you know, bring
Bring
some
it on.
over, and that was that.
I started to help her out, make her feel better.
Yeah.
I mean, this is all we're really looking for. And what I'm trying to say is that bringing it back to is it's just, it's so disappointing and thoroughly unconscionable that there are some people that know these things that we're talking about right now with your mother, and they're still saying, yeah, but don't let them have it. Like, you know, like I hate that mindset exists, and it obviously does, and it's obviously pervasive, and I would say it's the majority of people.
Sure, but yet you polled 100 physicians, oncologists, and you asked them how many of them would subject their family members to radiation and chemo. Had they been diagnosed with cancer?
Yeah.
But it's less than 20%.
Yeah, I've heard some dark numbers on what a doctor would present his family member or loved one with. Yeah, that's not the same as the patient, so I get it. So that's awful. So I'm so sorry you went through that. My mother also went down to the cancer reaper. And so I know it's brutal. I didn't know anything about it. That was in 96, so I didn't know anything back then. But it's so hard to get through and understand that people are going to say, oh, yeah, that's bullshit, it's anecdotal, when you know that it helped. And your mother is going to tell you these things. And why would she tell you anything else? Like, what is her motivation to tell you anything else? You know, this thing's not working. And she's going to go, oh, no, I like this one the best. Like, why would she say that? I mean, she was unwell and everything. So, of course, she's telling the truth. Of course, this is the way it is. And, of course, it should just be an option anyway. Like, it's going to ruin your brain, but we'll send you to war. It's going to ruin your brain, but we're frying you with chemo and you're 90. Like, why won't they just try this stuff? You know, they're definitely sitting on information. They don't want us to have it. And then you get into, once you make that awareness, now you're into the conspiracy field, and now it's even worse for you because now the guy's talking conspiracy.
Sure.
Yes, the logic and the facts lead to a place that you don't like. That's out of my control. I can't help that part.
And not only that, but if you look at the definition of what a conspiracy is, I mean, it's basically just two fucking people sitting in a room plotting and scheming, right? Which you're going to try to tell me that over the last 100 years it hasn't happened with cannabis or the hemp.
Like I said, I was having a conversation with a guy the other day, and I would say this guy is an average person, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I would just say in a lot of aspects that are too boring to list. And he said he was telling me about this cannabis being something that once they figure out how to regulate it to the point where making a proper medicine out of it, then everything's going to be okay. Like, this is such a limited, narrow point of view. I go, no, as soon as they figure it out, if they were able to figure it out, get into a pill, you're never going to see that thing. And then I asked this guy, he says, well, it's not legal. They haven't been able to work on it because it's been illegal and everything, which is technically true. But do you really think, like, just put your hand up, teacher, of all the pharmaceutical efforts, Novartis, Merck Frost, you name them all, you're going to tell me that because cannabis has been illegal for 80 years, none of these people have availed themselves of the scientific properties of it in their secret laboratories because it was illegal. Like, do you really think that Bayer hasn't taken that thing inside a glassed off, steeled off, guys wearing like hair nets and everything, and you're telling me they haven't worked that shit out? I think they have, and they know exactly what it can do, and that's why they're fighting against it forever.
DARPA's probably got a fucking self-watering plant, It's there's even in the like early 90s or mid 90s, you had big cigarette companies like Philip J. Morris buying swaths of land in the Emerald Triangle in California.
Yeah.
So what would be the purpose of that if not to conduct research and
Sure,
and development and whatnot?
Like, right? I'm sure one day in GlaxoSmithKline, some guy came down one day and he had a bunch of weed, and he went into the board meeting and went, I don't know what to tell you guys. but we don't need any more fucking drugs with this. You better not tell anybody. It's like, oh shit. Well, lobby the government, make sure it's never legal. You know, like they're running down those roads, and it's kind of funny, but I also believe it's true. But at the end of the day, if you're really thinking that, it's kind of funny and everything. But you're also a monster. You're literally a monster if you're functioning on that premise.
Sure. I mean, stopping the well-being of any individual is like, I mean, how do you classify that?
I don't know, but those are the guys that get the jobs. Those are the guys that set the policy after they write it, Bill.
But that's that whole corporate mentality where, I mean, do you remember the documentary, The Corporation, where these two Canadian filmmakers
Joel
sort
McCann and who's the other guy? Yeah.
It escapes me, but they basically approached a corporation as an individual and did a psychological analysis on it.
They're insane.
And they're fucked, bud. They're
a bunch
psychopathic.
There's a bunch of markers, and they hit them all.
So think about someone who has to be at the helm of one of those institutions.
You have to be nuts.
How ruthless you would need to be in order to like appease your shareholders, right?
I think it's a magnet for the unhinged. Basically, power in general, whether it's a corporate power or government power. I think it's a magnet for the unhinged. I think there should be tests where if you're gonna run for mayor, or prime minister, or whatever, you got to pass this test. You know, like a driver's license, it's not unreasonable to pass a driver's license. To get a driver's license, you got to know some things, right? A couple things, right?
Put them in a room with some fucking dogs and some kids. They'll figure out if the guy's got a good spirit, a good energy or not, right?
I really think so, because people are setting the agenda, and the problem with that is, like, on the one hand, we laugh at how stupid it is, and we get a good chuckle out of it. And look at this guy. Like, and then you play games like, does this guy really believe this shit? Or does this guy just saying this thing and he thinks he's a really good actor? Like, you play those games. Like, I don't even know if I can tell the differences sometimes. But honestly, it's really dangerous when you have a bunch of folks sitting around who don't really know anything. Now, this is Fox News, okay? And they've got a cop on there. And they're having a chat. You know, Fox News, the friends. The friends are sitting around, the Fox friends. And listen to this gentleman. He's going to talk about cannabis, because you know it's in the news, right? It's part of what's happening.
No one talks about this. THC is addicting. People I know so many people. They say they were told one thing and they end up getting addicted to it, and that's an addicting substance. There is a price to pay for pot.
There's a price to pay for pot.
There absolutely is a price to pay for pot.
This is the cop.
You know, I spent my entire adult life in law enforcement, and a lot of it investigating traffickers of drugs. And it's not a minor nonviolent felony. It's ruining families and killing people every day across the United States.
Tell us how.
And we stand here in denial, thinking
tell us how it
it's
happened.
not a gateway drug to drugs that's
you don't start
people.
on cocaine. You probably start with marijuana.
You do. You start with marijuana, and then you go to cocaine later.
That's
Thank you,
absolutely
sweetie.
right.
That's a nice
and
dress.
still today, we
Look
have
at
a
her
meth
arms. God,
problem
they're so
across
cute.
the
My
state and
socks are filled
country.
with cocaine
If someone's
right
in
now.
possession of meth, they're in possession of marijuana, because it kind of cuts the edge of the meth.
Okay, he
And
just
then
said
they
that. I'm going to say
use
that
the
again,
marijuana
because that's a
and-
good one, man. I mean, I got to put that back a second. Okay, listen to this thing. This is a guy telling us about meth and cannabis. Listen to this. This is great.
And then they use the marijuana and the meth, and they go out and kill themselves or overdose or kill someone else.
Right. Well, nonetheless,
Nonetheless, I love that. That's my favorite line of the whole thing. He goes, well, then they go out and they get anybody that's got cannabis also has meth, and then they do the meth and the cannabis, and they go kill a whole bunch of people, and it's the end of the world, and this is awful. Well, nonetheless, we do have, like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not what you would say to a guy that said that shit. You would either say, oh my God, is that really going to happen? Or you'd say, oh, that's not going to happen. You don't say, oh, nonetheless, anyway. Like, these people are insane, and this is the fucking agenda. And somebody is listening to this. The banner at the bottom is 12-year-old brought pot gummies to gym class, and now this guy's into everybody with cannabis has meth, and they're going to murder people. And this is on the news, folks. And when we have a guy say that the news is fake, and then you get mad because that guy said that news was fake, you are supporting this. Okay, you're supporting that this guy, well, he got some meth, and then next thing you know, he's got pot, and then all these monsters came down, and it was like the zombie apocalypse. Oh, okay, we'll be back with this genius right after this commercial for Fleischmann's margarine. I mean, we have to stop sitting there and taking people like this at their fucking word. Meanwhile, right, and I won't say I'm not jealous. Meanwhile, like 4 million people listen to that guy say this. And like maybe a couple thousand people are listening to what we're saying. And we're dead right about it. And this guy doesn't have a clue. So there's that energy. And we have to fight that all the time. I mean, the smaller megaphone is generally telling more truth.
And usually when you have individuals with those types of a platform, with that kind of an audience, I mean, the only way that they achieve that is through some sort of a corporate means anyways, right? So
Oh, sure.
if they don't have any sort of adherence to whatever policies or ideologies that these outlets have, there's no way that they would have gotten on that spot.
No.
So,
But what they also have is they have, other vendors who don't want to be associated with. Like there's probably like a plug-in Glade thing, or like you said, or some gravy mix that you can buy. And they don't want to be on the show that Fox is doing when they're talking about cannabis in a positive light. You know, all these guys have so much interest in just not having you around, right?
which is weird because if you look at the number of the population that partakes in cannabis, you would think that that is a pretty sizable demographic, right? So why would you all of a sudden want to marginalize these individuals and block your product or your service from it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense. And when you get down to what doesn't make sense, it's the omission of the good stuff. It's the repression of people that want to open up a business while they're sitting there going, we need more businesses. Our economy's hurting. Like, none of it makes sense. And I've looked at it from as generous a position from their position as I could muster. You know, like, okay, here's what they're saying. And just kind of go along with it, follow the official story. And as best as I can do that, you still find like so many problems and so many what must be deliberate fuck-ups. Like you couldn't even get that many mistakes if you just casually sat down and tried to come up with the new system, and then, there's a few problems there. Like you literally have to come up with planning as many problems as they have. I swear to God, like it took effort to come up with as many problems as it has.
Sure, it's such a clusterfuck. You would assume that people are obviously trying to run it into the ground in some capacity, right?
Yeah.
It's like
across the board on so many levels, like it must be deliberate, and this is where we get back to, they don't really want us to glean the information that can be gleaned when you use it. They don't really want you to benefit from the physical benefits you can get, because now you're not a customer for 9 other companies that always lobby the government and give them money. Like you're either on board with this or you're not. And they're trying to struggle to get this weed thing into a big corporate like Crisco oil thing or I was going to say a car company, but you can't even do that anymore. But they're trying to turn it into a big commodity thing. And if that's not going to go, then they don't want to do it. And since it's not going that way, it's stuttering along.
Yeah, it's about controlling the revenue streams, I think. It's just like with the dispensaries in Toronto. It was after October 17th where the frequency and the rate at which these spots were getting raided like increased tenfold. I mean, you used to see dispensaries still popping up pretty fairly frequently, right? But since the 17th, I think the new dispensaries like opening up has definitely slowed down quite a bit.
Sure. Well, then they'll have their laws, right? So you're really going to be a guy that can't work. So let's go back to your legal situation. Does this mean you're not able now to work as a legitimate player in this new cannabis paradigm from the government, or because you got these tickets in the old way, or what?
That is, I'm not quite sure about that. I guess at some point I'm going to have to take myself to a station and do a criminal background check just to see what comes up when that's done. Because the lawyer didn't really indicate what was happening, and the courts were definitely very vague in terms of what was going on. So that I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that's tough. Well, I hope it doesn't become a problem for you.
I've got digital fingerprints on record that at some point I'm hoping to get rid of.
Oh, yeah? Related to this?
Yeah.
So that's a problem when you go to the border, I guess?
Yeah, issues going into the States.
Issues going... And do you have any desire to go to the States? You don't seem like a person...
belly of the beast, but no interest.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
No interest.
So the good news, if you're just catching up now, the Canada-wide cannabis shortage is going to persist for years. So say the producers. But what do they know? So we won't have cannabis for years, but it was ready, and they didn't need Plan B, although they did have a Plan B, although we never got to know what it was because it wasn't there in the first place. And they're ready, and they want things to be safe, and they want medical patients to be addressed. And they want kids not to be using it, and they want criminal efforts not to be involved selling it. None of that's happening, folks. None of it. Not one bit of it. While this Bill Blair is being lobbied to not grow more while we have a shortage. Okay, that's where we're all sitting right now. That's where we're sitting right now. That's the place. So if I could say anything at that point, I would say that your legal representative has not been heard from you enough. First of all, your legal representative is a, unfortunately, cannabis-deprived individual who is not focusing and functioning at the highest possible level. Just like if you don't put in vitamin C to your tank. So these people are creating these laws and these repressions and these omissions of facts to make sure you also stumble along and don't do as well in your life. That's really what it works out to. I don't see how you could put all these facts on the table and see much else. I don't see it like, well, you know, they're doing what they can. They did the best they could. They made a couple mistakes, but, you know, it'll pick up later once they realize they made a couple of problems. I mean, it's not going that way. There's nothing but a sea of problems, and they're making sure to keep those problems problematic.
Sure. Even I think it was maybe 4 days into legalization, I received an email from my medical producer, my LP, basically apologizing for there not being any cannabis available because the recreational market had basically tapped them dry.
Wow. Imagine having to write that letter.
Take
take a letter.
Just imagine,
we don't have anything. The end.
Or imagine being a medical user, somebody who's reliant upon that to deal with whatever symptoms or ailments that they've got, and now they can't because people are just using it to be silly and watch TV or watch a movie or go play mini pod or whatever. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't knock the recreational use. I'm all for it.
No, of course not.
As a medicinal user, it's got to be extremely frustrating.
Well, it is for me. I am a medicinal user, although I am not tethered into the official system. And one of the reasons for that is even though I was, you know, teed up for medical, I wasn't necessarily desirous of using microwaved pot, okay, which is the medical, both of them are done.
But you could dip it in your pasteurized orange juice.
I could dip it in my pasteurized orange juice, yeah, a little bit at a time. Then you wait for it to dry, and it's a sweet crystal buzz when you get it. No, but I just didn't. I just didn't use it. And so while this legalized was coming, I personally wasn't worried about losing my my connections, if you will, my the folks that I'm involved with, who I can trust and I know are good purveyors. Nothing's changed for me,
and for most people too. I would assume that's the same situation.
Yeah.
I mean, I never had an issue, and don't perceive any sort of issues in the future, but. You know, based on locality and where people are, I'm sure some people do have a very difficult time procuring good quality cannabis.
Absolutely, and it's only harder now, no matter how you shake it, because the legalized market. But then it wasn't ready. You know, it just wasn't ready. They weren't ready. Like when if you believe what the government says, one of the biggest problems they have is with children smoking. Like just smoking in general. Let's not even talk about cannabis. Let's just smoking in general. So if that's the case, and they say that it is, if that's the case, how was there not a massively concerted effort to nail this edibles thing, to get it down, to do it properly, so that we knew exactly how many grams or milligrams or whatever the dosage is in that particular gummy? How many of those do I need to eat? One of them will just kind of take an edge off. Two of them will make me tired. Three of them will, you know, like lay it all out, figure it out. You know, the way they do at the liquor store when they say this is a nice sherry to go with this kind of thing and this is a nice white wine to go with this kind of fish. And they don't do any of that stuff with the cannabis, and like it's caused all these problems where no one even knows what it is or how to use it, and they want to hire people that don't know how to use it because they don't want a guy with your tickets.
Sure. Well, they made it very clear that anybody with any sort of dispensary background,
we don't want you.
Is not.
That's experience and knowledge. We don't want that. We're trying to fuck things up over here.
Sure.
It's really bad. It is really bad. I'm so sorry to be a bummer. If you were listening to this show to go, hey, this is going to be a great time with legal cannabis, blah, blah, blah. It's just not the party that you think. And we have the part that's really important, okay, is that to be able to do this, they must have, and they did, go out into the world, study existing models, go look at Colorado, go look at Portugal, go look at places around the world that have already been using it or not using it. And like in, you know, Amsterdam, where, okay, it's illegal, but everybody uses it and no one gets in trouble for it. And you study all these things. I'm sure I could come up with a pretty decent model for this coast-to-coast scenario here that far outstrips in both delivery systems, caliber of weed, everything. I'm sure, and I'm not a genius. I'm not saying I am. I'm saying most people with that data could come up with a far superior system than this deliberate failure.
I think we can go back to your point earlier with that most of these people that are in these positions to make these big decisions aren't users.
Right. Well, that's true too. Yeah.
So there's just this fucking massive disconnect.
It's a
I mean,
number.
how can you be such a fucking hypocrite and be involved in like an industry or whatever that you're not even using? Like, it's
Well, because it's the same thing as like I'm a vegetarian. Okay, I don't eat meat. All right, but I could be well invested into pork hocks for the futures. You know what I mean? Like I could be invested into corn even if I don't eat it. Right. So that's where a lot of these people are with cannabis.
It's like Bill Blair.
It's like Kim's dad. I'm going to call him out right now. Kim, producer of the show. Day one, right from the beginning. So her dad, I'm going to call him out right now. You can cut this piece up and send it to your dad. So her dad is a very decent, regular, normal guy who doesn't approve of any of this kind of shit, right? And never likes the fact that Kim has ever used it ever. But she's been honest and saying, look, I do use it. I use it for this. I use it for that. He's never liked it. Last year, was it?
No, he used it for 30 or 40 years.
Oh, he used it for 30, 40 years?
But then he quit and took the again type.
Oh, he's a user, so he's 3 or 4 decades in. Then he says don't use it. But then guess what happens? So Kim's been using it off and on over time. So then last year, he buys a bunch of stocks in cannabis companies and says to her, oh boy, I bought a bunch of stocks in cannabis company. Now this is all pre-legalized. So if he's looking at her for being a bad person for using it, he's already investing into an illegal company at that point. And then he's mad at her for using cannabis, which, if no one uses cannabis, he don't make no money. I mean, this is, like, how does somebody think that shit?
Well,
the same head.
They're trying to disconnect the use from the profits and the making the money of it,
That's
right?
not realistic, though.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
One supports the other, obviously.
These are the straight-laced people telling us that we're the crazy ones for thinking these thoughts, but then they'll have a thought where, hey, I'll invest in this thing, and I hope no one ever uses it because it's awfully terrible, but boy, I can't wait to make a bunch of money on it. Like, that's going on in the same head.
Yeah.
Like, these are the people that we're supposed to look up to for,
I'm going home later and I'm going to invest in a shitload of thalidomide. But
there you go. There you go. And then I'm going to build a time machine, go back to 1960, and make a ton of money selling babies flippers. Sounds good. Oh, well, we tested it for a whole 2 weeks already. You know, some people say to me, why don't you trust the pharmaceutical companies? And I'll say thalidomide, and they'll go, what's that? And I'll go, well, we don't need to have this conversation because you're not really set to be the guardian about my pharmaceutical interests if you don't know what the fuck that is.
Oh, but just let them know. I mean, if you look at any word that has pharma in it, pharmaceutical, pharmacist, pharmacology, it's all derived from the Greek word pharmakeia, which fucking loosely translates into witchcraft and sorcery. So,
yeah,
there you go. There you go.
Well, it has been something that it's all about people, right? We're chasing profits and dollars and everything. But when Kim's dad did this thing last year, I was on that all day. I was going, but you can't want that also. To me, it's like, oh my God, I am so hungry right now, and I'm not going to eat anything for weeks. Like, that doesn't really solve the problem, though, of being hungry, to not eat for weeks.
Sure.
It's like, I don't get this. But here we go here. The UN committee. So this is, our leader, Justin Trudeau. He takes every single marching order from the UN and the EU. I bet you Justin wishes we were in the EU and in the Mexican Union with the states as well. But it turns out that a UN committee is unexpectedly, although I didn't write this headline or I wouldn't have put that word in there, UN committee unexpectedly, or how about expectedly, withholds marijuana scheduling recommendations. They withhold the recommendations. Now, what does that mean?
Unexpectedly, though.
Like, it's unexpected. We didn't know you were going to hold these regulations. Like this is just a handful of words, and it's already the recipe for great distress. Because if you understand it and read it, what it's saying is that on Friday, the World Health Organization, last Friday, or maybe 2 Fridays ago now, was expected to make recommendations about the legal status of marijuana, the international legal status, because Canada has already apparently pissed off the UN by doing what we're doing with cannabis. But the reform advocates are hoping that it's going to include a call to deschedule the plant. You know, you were saying before about CBDs and everything. The schedule is Schedule 1, like heroin. So there's been a talk, with Dacha, what's going on in South Africa, what's going on with his weed everywhere, what's going on with Patrick's medical needs, mine, so many other people, is we'd like it to not be a criminalized substance anymore, if that's okay. If you could just take it off, since it's not.
I'm not a criminal, bud. I'm just
No.
a person who has issues and problems, and this plant alleviates them. For
Right,
me.
so we were going to that. So all these countries are legalizing or, decriminalizing or whatever. We were heading to this, and we're going down that road. But in a surprise twist, a representative from the UN and the WHO, the World Health Organization, which is part of the UN, a specialized agency of it, it says they will be temporarily withholding the results of its cannabis assessment. Wait a minute. First, they tell you, we're not going to change the rules, and then they're telling you further into the story, which people don't read a lot of these stories. I swear to God, they don't anymore. But what they're saying is they're not even going to release the assessment. Wow. Why is that?
Probably has some really interesting information.
Because it's so bad, they'd want to tell us right away if it was bad, right? They'd be going, look, see?
Sure.
It fucking
supports their whole cause, right?
But if they're holding not just the chemical itself, the actual weed, but the report on it, wow. It says the marijuana recommendations are now expected to come out in January. They need another month of tinkering. I bet you they're going to rewrite the fucking shit. They found a bunch of great stuff, and now they got to make sure that great stuff's not in there. So earlier this year, WHO expert Committee on Drug Dependence, ECDD, released a pre-review of marijuana that included several positive evidentiary findings. That's it. Positive evidentiary. So it's positive, and there's evidence for this. Okay, so cannabis has never caused a fatal overdose, the committee said, and research demonstrates that the ingredients in the plant can effectively treat pain and improve sleep, for example. Let's hold the regulations. The pre-review results prompted a more in-depth critical review. One of the final stages before the UN's Commission on Narcotics Drugs makes a determination about whether or not it should remain in the most restrictive international drug classification. These people are on the planet, they wrote this, then they put it out into the world and we're reading it. Like, what? How do you even get through your day?
It's the propaganda, but that's it. It's, I can't read that type of stuff. It's like...
That's all this is. This is a whole show. I'm reading this shit all the time. I'm going nuts reading this stuff. This is insane. This is like we have water on the floor. Be sure to put a paper towel on the ceiling. I mean, what?
Or put all the electrical cords into the fucking puddle.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. So what do you think? Like, how do you, seriously, I'm pushing you, man. How do you get through? I am having a really fucking hard time with this, particularly when the UN is also telling, Justin Trudeau to do a bunch of other things that we also don't want. And by that, I mean there's this compact on immigration thing. And if you don't like that, you're automatically a racist.
Sure.
If you don't like it, you're a racist. But if you don't like it, you don't like giving up your ability to another body to do something. I don't want them to print our money. I don't want them to put up my library card registrations either. We'll take care of that shit at home. So, but now he's signing on to UN things. So I have to think that he's way deep in the UN pocket, and that he is completely fine with the fact that they're going to put it into a category 1 or whatever. But this is another indication of the truth going the opposite way of reality.
And I guess
we're ruled by it.
I guess it's like any situation, everybody just needs to become a little bit more self-sufficient and reliant, and not so dependent on what the government is saying and doing, right? Because obviously it's counterintuitive to what's best for the people. I mean,
yeah,
I see it, you see it, a whole slew of other people see it. So I guess just for people to just continue using their cannabis, right? Obviously. If you can grow your own, obviously do that. Try to cut the government out as best you can.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the oversight and the control. It's too much, and it's unnecessary, and it's unwelcome.
What do you say to a person? This is a good. We'll go out on this and take your time with it. But what do you say to a person who, I mean, I know you say, I don't care about that, whatever, and I get that. But a person who is on the fence, I care. Because they want to hear stuff. They're open, right? So what do you say to a person who says, look, I want to try it, but, the government has had it illegal for so long. Now it's legal, but you can't get it anywhere. People are fighting about it. I just don't even want to, I'll just do without it kind of thing.
Just kind of shrug it off
Yeah.
and go back to their usual routines.
Yeah. I don't want to get involved with all that shit. There's a lot of shit to get involved in if you are involved in it. So some people just don't even want to bother with it.
I guess those are maybe the people you would ask, hey, you ever bought a fucking tread climber? Have you ever bought a Vitamix? Like, why? What was the sole purpose of that? Okay, to self-improve and to better your well-being. And, so if this plant, if there's evidence that cultures have used it and utilized it for thousands of years, and they're finding remnants of it in vases in China, and there's still like active THC in it, like, I mean, there's just so many people and so many cultures that have utilized it, right? So, and for what? Why has it been so popular? Right? It's like laughing and smiling. It's contagious. It's good. It's just you need it. And then you get into the whole endocannabinoid system and the receptors, and why would they be there if not to be utilized? And where are you getting your cannabinoids and all these different things? And I mean, there's probably a multitude of ways to approach people. First would probably be to figure out what type of an individual they are and how to breach them. Right? I guess it's
yeah. Like, what's your ailment? You know,
what do you need fixing? Right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's something that you can use as a way to like solve those problems.
Well, I certainly hope that more people like yourself, and by that I mean people that know about this plant that's being made into products, all kinds of products. It can be a product, but the essence of it at the very beginning is just a plant, just a couple of leaves coming up out of the dirt and a seed. And I guess I really wanted to have Patrick on a long time ago, and we didn't quite get to it. You know, stuff happens, right? I wanted to have you in there back when you were actually still selling this stuff in the dispensary, but wasn't able to get that going on. But I really appreciate your perspective on before and after. And you have you've used this as a pain thing for yourself. You've used it in the relief of your mother when she was not well. And I guess the question I'm going to ask you, I didn't know I was going to ask you this, but I know you're a father, and I know you have a young daughter, and and so the biggest issue that anybody else can say, they could say, well, you know, Patrick's this renegade lunatic who smokes weed, great, but you know, he shouldn't really be getting any of that near his daughter, kind of thing. And there's a whole mindset of people who mean well. They totally are good folks. I'm not here to argue with them, but they really fully 100% absolutely believe that no kind of element from the cannabis plant whatsoever should be in a young person ever.
Show them a video of this.
You're 20, you got your kid. What do you do? Like, how do you get by with your kid? What do you tell her?
Well, first and foremost, I don't dumb anything down with my daughter. I speak to her the same way I would talk to you about the subject. Right. I'm very open, very honest. I tell her everything. Any question she has, I'll answer it. In terms of how other people might perceive that, it's I mean, again, you just if you go on YouTube and you watch those videos of those young infants that are suffering from the seizures, and then they're given some cannabis oil. I mean, any parent, bud. I mean, you don't even have to be a parent, and you can watch a video like that, and you get upset.
Sure.
And why would anybody want somebody to suffer that way?
Right.
And if all it takes is to administer a half a rice-sized grain portion of oil sublingually under the tongue, or however, and that instantly reduces that, even with pets. Like, you've seen those videos of the dogs having seizures, and they rub it on the paws, and almost instantaneously the dog's like right back to normal. Bro, like, why wouldn't anybody want that, right? So I mean, I try not to get into like the whole arguing thing, because once you start butting heads with somebody, they've already cut you off, and they don't want to absorb anything that you're trying to tell them. So I try to play more of like a sympathetic role and just be like, well, think of it like this, or look at it like that, and just give them a slew of perspective that may not be their own, and I'm sure one of them will resonate with them, you know. But I like when my daughter has a uterine problem, and she has these like really severe cramps when she gets her period, right? And she takes CBD capsules. I give her CBD capsules. She tells me, she said, these CBD capsules do so much more for me than my
Midol or whatever.
My prescribed. Yeah, Midol, that's exactly what it is. Works so much better for her.
Wow.
And the Midol has like a whole slew of side effects that are going to give her issues later on in life that, you know, it's like the revolving door thing. Well, now she's going to need more medication to deal with that, and then more medication to deal with that. Now they got that commercial where it's like, well, if you're suffering from taking too much fucking medication, we've got a fucking small purple pill for you. It's like, bro, I already have too many fucking pills. You know, like, I don't want a fucking pill, whatever color it is. So, you know, I mean, I'm sold. I don't need convincing. I'm fully aware.
No. I know you're sold. I'm just saying. Other people will say, "Well, what about her brain? What if she uses it and it ruins her brain? She's not 24 yet. What are you going to do?" Like, what do you tell people that say that when you're having a conversation and not some idiot saying that? But like, what do you how do you address that? Or
First of all, I've eliminated any mystique about the plant because now the lame dad smokes it, right? The uncool fucking dad smoking weed. Like,
Right.
I have no rush to get into that.
Right.
You know, like when I
Right.
was growing up, my parents like thought it was like the worst. So to rebel and smoke, I mean,
sure.
that was part and parcel, right? But my daughter, she's just like, oh, yeah, well, you know, I ask her all the time, it's like, hey, have you ever smoked? Have you tried? Your friends? And she's like, oh, yes, people smoke, they smoke, so-and-so smokes, they've asked, whatever. And she
No
would
big
tell-
deal.
And she would tell me if she did. She's
Yeah.
told me when she's tried a drink of this or a drink of that, but she's never tried cannabis, and she's not in
Yeah.
any sort of rush to.
The forbidden fruit. That's it. What an aspect, right? Like they've been making such a big deal out of it. People want to do it.
Sure, but at the same time, she's being fully informed about the medicinal properties and how it can help individuals. So, that being said, if there's ever an instance in her life where she's, you know, succumbing to whatever and she needs some relief, she knows that cannabis can offer that, right?
Yeah, it's a tool, and it's not a big deal. It's a tool, and you know, it's over there by the lawnmower and the chainsaw and the kettle.
That's it.
And the toolbox. It's right over there. We are gonna go away. We have to. I'm gonna do this properly. I'm not sure when we're coming back, but we are. We have an imperfect schedule. But if you're just listening to them in order, shouldn't be a problem. Or listening to them at all. Our guest today has been Patrick White. He is a well. You still have the store, right? You've got Conspiracy Culture.
We still have the online presence, and we still do event productions. So,
right,
we're still active.
You still and what kind of events do you do?
Oh, all sorts of things. This year coming up in 2019, we've got Dean Ryan coming in from the States. We've got Sean Stone, the son of Oliver Stone, coming in for an event.
Oh, right.
We're bringing Graham Hancock back in. We're going to be tied into the Alien Cosmic Expo in the summer. A whole bunch of different things on the go. Like the event production was something that I really liked. And with the absence for the last year, I've really missed it, and I miss the community and facilitating like discussion and people, you know, it's exactly the same thing that you're trying to do here with the show, and I miss it. So 2019, we're getting back full steam into the events. And,
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So, and the tickets are always online on your website, etc. for these things?
Anything that will be anything to do with us will always be available through our website, which is conspiracyculture.com.
Conspiracyculture.com. Okay. And of course, I brought Patrick in because, like I say, there is the conspiracy angle. We have been talking about it. There is lying by omission. That's definitely at play here with cannabis. And, you know, there really can't be a full answer all points discussion about cannabis without the conspiracy aspect. There's no possible way. I mean, you know, we have talked about it for thousands of years. We've used it for thousands of years. And then all of a sudden it was illegal for 80 years, and then all of a sudden it's back on again. So there's some kind of conspiracy there, absolutely. And you should really take a look at it for, you could be missing a key nutrient. Imagine if I just told you about vitamin C for the first time, you ran out and tried some, how fantastic you'd feel. I really promise you, a lifetime without it, you would notice the influx of that right away. And I hope that you avail yourself of this particular nutrient, which is not on the food pyramids. It's not in the large food groups. They don't have, you know, cheese and meat and fruit and weed. Although they should. They really should have that. Your mother, if things were ideal, would already have that circulating in her breast milk while you are suckling. And we could do this a whole lot better than we have been doing it. But we are going to come back and we'll find out some more things from some other people. It never stops. It's such a treasure trove of positive information. It makes it extremely suspect. And when I see some government minister coming down saying, "Oh yeah, no, that's it's kind of bad actually," and I'm, you know, I used to be a cop and everything, you know, and I got a lot of pensions and stuff, and I'm, you know, I know my nose looks like shit and my eyes are all fucked up and I'm all out of shape and everything, but I came up with a system for cannabis use and I want everybody to stick to this. And that's the way it's going to be. And if we run out of weed, too bad. You're just going to have to wait for a year and a half or something because we're ready, because we knew, because we didn't have plan B, because we knew plan B, because we don't need it, because you don't need it, because the people who were selling it were bad. And the people that are saying good things about it are lying. Do you really believe any of that shit? Because that's what they're telling you. Give your head a shake.
Are you looking for non-stop, continuous cannabis and psychedelic programming? If you are, then turn your browsers to 420radio.ca or paceradio.net, where you will find the 420 Pace re-rolled Saturday. Everything gets started at 8 a.m. Eastern Saturday morning.
Hi, I'm Timmy.
And I'm Mary Jane. He's the newbie.
She's the doobie. And this is the show
where we
tote
cannabis.
Talk.
From both sides.
Is that even possible?
Stay tuned. We'll be back after this toke.